And it automatically started YouTube. Okay. Good. Oh, I think I see us on Twitch. Oh. Do I see us on YouTube? It shows live, but just a black screen. Hopefully it's not just a black screen. Okay, it's just loading. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Hey, it's working. I see us.
Yeah. There we are.
Good. Okay. Whew. That was a struggle. We got there. We got there in the end.
I feel like that can just sum up a lot of things.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that just yep, apply that to just about the last entire month and whew. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, how you feeling?
Oof, I am feeling beat. I feel like this week has been a bit of a ringer, but nothing like recording a show, then playing some board games later can at least try to get some R&R in. How about you?
Yes. Good. Ah, yes. Okay. I'm good. Are we ready?
Let's do it.
Sweet. Okay. Where's my notes? Welcome to episode 54 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, dragonrider, DankestDad, and RonMexico is not here this week, unfortunately. But you know what? It's been a bit of last couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I'm surprised that I'm the one who's here and not Ron, considering, he beat me so senseless in our THL match. I'm surprised I didn't show up with a bag over my face. I don't think I'm allowed to be on the air, but I'm here and he's not. It's funny how things work.
Yes. And I don't know if I even remember that you two played versus each other, so that's where we're all at.
I don't think anybody really remembers, thankfully. The bad news is I lost. The good news is it was a 15-minute best of 5.
What? Best of 5 that only took 15 minutes total?
Yeah, Ron got to play Hearthstone and I got to watch. It was awesome.
Oh no. Disaster.
I mean, you hear all this stuff about short form content and that man took it to heart. Bless him.
He's like, let's see if we can get this whole series in a YouTube, short. Here we go.
At this rate,
no.
yeah, at this rate it'll be a TikTok next time I play. This it was rough, but hey, good for him.
Oh, well, it's yes, unfortunately it has been a couple of weeks since we did record last, so it feels like there was a lot that we missed, including that THL match. But let's get caught up a little bit. So what's been going on with us over the last couple of weeks? I will say now we are in June. I think the last time that we were able to record this podcast was like mid-May, like May 17th, I believe. So it's been 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks ago was our last show. Unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah. So what have you been up to?
Well, been living my life. The day job has been getting a little busier, so doing some data sciencing, but otherwise, Girl Power came out for Universus, got a chance to play some of that, and that meta game is almost over already. So on to the next one, but Yeah, I've been just having a blast with Universus, Star Wars, picked up Pokemon TCG. I don't have a problem. Life is good. How about you, Don?
That's awesome. I feel like not necessarily reverse roles, but it's like one of those like that's the kind of thing that I normally say. I'm like, I'm playing this, I'm playing that, I'm playing all these things, and now I'm like, I've played nothing. I have just had life, and uh there was definitely some real not good life going on for a bit, which was part of why we were unable to record. We kind of, I think, each had a little bit of stuff going on, but yeah, there was some real rough stuff going on, unfortunately. But I think I'm a little bit past that, and now kind of in the like just trying to kind of get caught up and get back to like the maintaining phase at least, and then from there I can work on like getting ahead again, hopefully. But sometimes life does that, and unfortunately, some of that stuff has to come before games and content and that kind of stuff. And it's not my first choice, obviously, but that's just what ended up happening this time. So, getting back on track though, and I feel like in a way, both of us have kind of had these things going on where we're like, what if we kind of use these experiences for our topic today? Which honestly, I feel like personal experiences create some of the best like topics to talk about with these, because if we're having them, likely a lot of other people have these experiences and need these tips and guidance and stuff too. So I'm pretty excited about the fact that at least we could come up with like a topic or idea from what we've been dealing with. So
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into that topic, we got some news. I know it's been a while, but things have actually happened. So, for Hearthstone, Twist has been the new hotness. After a little bit of a hiatus, Twist is back, and there was some hacking. There was a boy who was a little too good. Sorry, Arfus. But yeah, now the game mode feels like it's in a great place, and it's been pretty fun. But yeah, new balance changes will come next week, and we are getting around mid-June, and early July is the normal time a new set comes out. So we will probably have some news about that in the next episode or two. Otherwise, for Lorcana, Pixelborn is no more. This was the web app that was used to play the game online, was run by the community, and we'll see what comes out of the ashes, but for now it's gotten a little bit tougher to play Lorcana outside your LGS. And I think the last big thing is that Modern Horizons 3 for Magic the Gathering is coming about, and now should be, I think as of today, this weekend, draftable on MTG Arena. So Modern Horizons 1 and 2 were amazing draft sets, so if you want to play some Magic today soon, it's as good a time as any.
yes. Yeah, I think there's some like different pre-release events happening around this weekend as well for like the physical product. So it's pretty cool. It's always exciting when those happen.
Absolutely. And yeah, so on the competitive side, looks like we do have some items. Since I stole your thunder on the news, Don, you want to do the organized play?
Hey, no problem. Yeah, sure. So for like competitive and organized stuff, in general, not sure how much card game stuff there's gonna be. So we'll have a man on the inside that can maybe give us a little info. But we have Origins, which is like a tabletop gaming convention that will be happening in the middle of this month in June, from June 19th to the 23rd. And yeah, DankestDad is going to be there, so that's exciting. I think so. I think you and I were talking about this a little bit ago. Origins was kind of like the original, like big tabletop convention, like decades, decades ago. And then Gen Con kind of came around and was like the smaller, newer convention, and now they've kind of become the reverse, where like Gen Con is really like the big go-to like popular, name that people know for like tabletop and gaming conventions. But Origins is still around. It's not, I don't think it's nearly as large as Gen Con, but it is still around. It's still there. And I'm excited to see what they have this year. You'll have to let us know like how much kind of trading card game stuff there is. I'm sure there's going to be Magic, but with all of these new card games like Lorcana and maybe even Star Wars coming out, that maybe there is something that's popping up at Origins.
Yeah, so I can say last year that Soulforge Fusion and Star Realms being the drafting game, the LCG, if you are familiar, but that one's a lot of fun. Those two were centerpiece, and this year, Star Wars Unlimited is the new kid on the block, and I know I was not quick enough to the gun to sign up, but there is going to be a big Star Wars Unlimited tournament there, so if you are either competing or interested in watching, should be pretty cool. And I know that I'll be doing some drafts on the side. That's my favorite way to play. But yeah, they have lots of amazing stuff, lots of cool games to try, and just getting to talk with the designers and studios is such a cool experience, and being able to see behind the scenes is great.
Yeah, that's always so cool. And one thing that I also do like generally about some of the smaller events, um, or even just things like last year, Ron and I got to go to BlizzCon, and they did a lot of like the dev signings, and we got to chat with them a little bit and stuff. So like that kind of thing is always so cool, as especially as someone who's like so invested in some of these games, getting to talk to the devs like directly and get to ask a little bit more of those questions rather than just like the general things you might see from devs is super cool. So yeah, we'll have to get some like reports. I think Ron's joked about when I went to events like dragonrider reports. We'll have to have Dankest reports on some of the cool stuff that's happening at Origins.
Yeah. The other cool thing that happens is my bank account drains after I buy all the cool things. So we'll see what happens this year, but
is
should
is
still be
that
fun.
cool? Is that a cool thing that happens? I mean, it's a thing that happens. I don't know if that's the definition of cool, but
Well, the stuff I got's cool at least, right?
that's true.
That's what really counts.
Yeah. So it's really the friends we make along the way. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, in other card game competitive news, just earlier this morning, this just in. All right, hand over ear. This just in. On Twitter, Hearthstone has announced the Masters Tour for August 16th through 18th. That's right, they're announcing it well in advance. And that qualifying ladder season is this month. It just kicked off in June. So that is June and July are the 2 months to qualify for that. So again, that is usually a 16-player event, which will be like the top 4 from Americas, the top 4 from Europe, the top 4 from Asia servers, and then 4 with the kind of combined point total at the top after the 4 from each region to create that 16 players. So it's going to be pretty exciting. It's, I think, the first time since they've been doing these fewer, like reduced number of Masters Tours that they have announced it this far in advance. So that's very, very exciting. Good to know. And I know a lot of the competitive players like really appreciate that. So very excited that they announced that ahead of time. And we have that to look forward to.
Good luck to the players going for it. That is a tough ladder grind, but they're up to snuff. They are real good.
Yes.
And last but not least, what about Pokemon? Anybody playing Pokemon this weekend? Going to New Orleans?
Oh yeah, tons of players. So I love talking about these, like some of the Magic events and like the Pokemon events, because we can talk about it and mention kind of like the card game side, but there's also Pokemon Go. They have Pokemon VGC, which for our team Amberflight Gaming, we have 2 members now who are competing in the VGC, the video game, 2 Pokemon out on the field fighting versus each other at a time competition, which is exciting. So we have Nails and Lexicon, aka Alex Underhill. I love how I said like his gamer tag first, and AK, also known as his name. Great.
Nail stays a mystery though.
That's right. Not like you can look on the websites and the brackets or anything and find his name. Okay. I don't know. Look, the Pokemon and other games do it a little bit differently, because for Pokemon you have to use your like real name. They don't really allow aliases and stuff, so it's weird. Whereas like for Hearthstone, we have all sorts of like goofy names that we have in like Masters tours and high-end events. It's fantastic. But anyways, so yeah, that New Orleans, the North America, or the New Orleans, right? It's in New Orleans? Okay.
Correct.
I was like, did I mess that up? No. New Orleans, the North America International Championships event is going on this weekend. It did just start this morning. It's a 3-day event. And so we have a couple AFG players playing in that, but we'll see what's going on with the TCG side of things a little bit as well. So that's pretty cool. And this is also the last major event for Pokemon before the World Championship in August, actually August 16th through the 18th as well. That same weekend that the Masters Tour is going to be happening for Hearthstone. So that World's Championship is going to be in Hawaii, which, we'll talk more about that as those events get a little bit closer. But I believe there's also I think it's in Hong Kong. There's a Hong Kong International for Pokemon happening this weekend as well. So kind of you have like the North American one and then those all happening. So there's a lot going on in the Pokemon world to kind of close out the, competitive season before Worlds coming up. So that is pretty exciting, and we'll be definitely keeping our eyes on what's going on for that. I think that's really kind of all we have that's like happening or coming up for competitive stuff, unless you have anything else.
No, that'll do it. So let's get into that topic. So, jumping or returning to an established game. So, like Dawn might have hinted, that's something that we've been doing a little bit of. I know that for me, I've had to dust off the Pokemon TCG muscles. I think I was talking before the show, it's been around 9 years since I have played the Pokemon TCG in like a serious capacity. And for the last couple weeks or so, I've been learning the ropes on Pokemon TCG Live, and hopefully will be showing up at my local. And yeah, how do we go about that though? New card game, but we've played a lot of card games. Can we take anything we've learned and use it to succeed? That's the real question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's kind of 2 discussions here. I did try to look back because I know Ron and I kind of had given some tips and talked about like learning new stuff, whether that's like learning a new deck or learning a new game. I couldn't find the exact episode. We might have talked about it more recently, but if the episode I was thinking is what I found, that was episode 17. We're now on episode 54, so it has been quite a while since we've talked about that kind of stuff. But there kind of is, I think, a little bit of difference if you are brand new to a card game or if you have played it in the past, like you said. Now, it also could depend on like how much the game has changed. So I know people have said that for Hearthstone, right? Like they haven't played in 5-8 years. And you just mentioned that for the Pokemon TCG. It's been like 9 years. It's like so much has changed in that time that things feel like it feels like a new game. So if that's the case, I think the kind of ideas for learning a brand new game typically can just apply. I think depending on how you like to go about things, like Ron and I had very like opposite approaches when we talked about this in the past. And it's kind of interesting because like people can dive into things so differently. And I'm kind of curious now to get your take on this, because I think for me, I like to start by just like playing a little bit. Go like if it's brand new, I go through like the tutorial, kind of play some games, get a feel for like the overall mechanics of a game, that kind of stuff. But Ron was very much like the opposite. He was like, I'll go watch streams, like I'll learn what it's about and like learn a deck or something first, right? And then like just take it and jam it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I just like start jamming it and then I go find info. So what kind of approach do you take, or can you use examples from, jumping back into the Pokemon TCG?
Sure. So, at least for me, when I'm coming back to a game like Pokemon, a big part of what I do is I try to look for some articles or content. I don't think I go in depth as Ron when it comes to watching a stream and trying to learn a particular deck, but I want to know what things have changed. Whether the game is, in the same place, are the same mechanics powerful that were powerful then, have certain things shifted in terms of power level. And to be more specific, so when I was playing, if you are a Pokemon player, I'm sorry for making you feel old, but when I was playing, Shaman EX was the way to go. So Shaman EX was a Pokemon that had the Pokemon power that once per turn you could drop 6 cards. Drop to 6 cards. And Shaman was pretty good. And most of the best decks involve fishing Shaman out of your deck and using that card advantage to fuel your turn to pop off and get your deck's game plan online. So, looking at Pokemon, I could see that there are some similar cards. Squawkabilly and Bibarel now fill kind of similar roles, but across the board, it seems like decks have a lot more diversity in their draw engines. So, I know that when it comes to deck building now, I'm aware that drawing cards is not going to be something that's the same as what I'm used to. And I try to apply this to other principles like damage, Pokemon health, energy, and get a feel there. Another thing is to play with someone with experience. So with G, I'm fortunate enough to have Baystink, who's been playing Pokemon TCG herself and is very experienced. So being able to duo some games, see how she thinks about the situations is really nice and kind of helps me get in the mindset and adjust to what I need to know to win certain matchups and do everything.
Yeah, it's it can be difficult though if you are either jumping in after a long time or if you're completely new to a community or to a game that's already established. Like we keep mentioning things. I mean, Pokemon has been around for multiple decades, right? Hearthstone just hit 10 years. Magic's been around for multiple decades. Especially compared to these newer games that we're mentioning, like Disney Lorcana that just came out last year, Star Wars Unlimited that just came out this year. um, it might be a little bit easier to find communities or people that you could work with and things like that, or streamers, to be able to kind of learn the meta, learn some decks, learn some key cards, learn these things, and kind of accelerate your learning and jumping into these games a little bit faster in some of these established games. But also, it's it can be difficult though because for me sometimes you also feel like, oh, like these games or these communities are already established. Like, as someone who's brand new, am I going to be welcome? Are people going to want to even help me out, or are they just going to be like, like, go play noob? Like, are they going to be welcoming, or are they just going to kind of like kick you to the curb and make you learn it on your own anyways? So in terms of like trying to connect with people and like find somebody that maybe you can work with to learn it a little bit better, like you were saying, kind of like you have the teammates, and uh there definitely can be some of that. But I would say also, if you come across streamers or if you jump into discords where maybe they're not as welcoming, or you're not quite getting that like help or assistance that you feel like you'd like, try to keep finding different communities, because I think in every game there's going to be some communities that maybe aren't as welcoming depending on what you're looking for, and there's going to be some that are going to be, like welcome you with arms wide open. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what we're here for, like, to help new players or whatever. So, um, if you can't find something quickly, just keep trying to find different communities. This can be again, streamers, like sometimes streamers will have their own discords, or maybe they'll run events, or they'll do some different stuff. If there's gaming teams like Amberflight Gaming, different games might have teams or things like that. You can find podcasts. Honestly, like podcasts are a great way to find communities, especially if it's a podcast like very specific to one game. Like, we're kind of a more generalized podcast, right? We talk about multiple games and that kind of stuff. But if you can also find like a podcast community that's very specific to one game, they usually will have like discords and communities like that that can really help a lot of people. And it's great to be able to talk to people of different skill levels and experience levels with games as well, because then you can kind of see, like, I think sometimes people who have been playing card games, especially for a long time, sometimes they're kind of set in their ways, or they maybe don't remember what it's like being new, or trying to like, kind of get into a game and be like, oh my gosh, like they might be surprised by a lot of stuff. But people who aren't really new, right, they're going to be like, oh yeah, the cost of stuff, like they just are like, oh yeah, that's how it is, and they like don't think twice about it. And I think that is going to lead me to kind of the next question that I have, which is talking about like the entry cost or potential cost of getting into these games. I know, unfortunately, card games do just kind of tend to be one of those bit more expensive hobbies, rather than games you just like pay for once and get to play a bunch. Card games are continuously coming out with new cards. There's new expansions or sets, and you have to buy stuff. There's varying prices depending on if you're playing a digital card game like Hearthstone or Lorcana, or Legends of Runeterra, or if it's a physical card game like Disney Lorcana or Magic the Gathering, which has both. But if you're looking for physical cards versus digital, there's going to be varying prices and things there. So what kinds of things do you feel like you would want to suggest or look at in terms of like the cost of getting into these games?
So, one thing I would say is that while games can be expensive to play at a competitive level, there almost is always a much more affordable, reasonable entry to the game to play at. If you are a Magic player, for example, or are trying to learn, you can go to your Commander night with a precon for $50-ish and do just great. Better yet, you could even message on your Facebook group, ask around in the store, hey, I'm interested in learning the game. Is there a demo deck? Does anyone have an extra deck they'd be willing to let me borrow or teach me? And guess what? People are by and large going to help you out. Most people are not playing these card games for the big bucks. They're doing it because it's fun for them and because they want to engage with other people who share their hobby. And if you are nice and willing to learn, then you know what? They're going to open doors for you with that. There also are formats in Magic like Cube, where you can play without spending any money at all. That's drafting from a pool of cards that some people have. Pokemon TCG Live, the online client, is actually completely free at the moment. You can't even spend money on it if you want to, which is, a pretty cool step in making the game accessible. And if you're trying to learn Hearthstone, there are new player decks, there are returner decks, but can be a little bit pricier. So if the game is physical, especially, ask around in your local community. You also can try Tabletop Simulator as well. But there are lots of ways for you to get your feet wet, try the game, and decide if it's something that you enjoy and want to pursue further before you make a big financial commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the physical games also have starter decks usually that are like somewhere between 15 to $20, I would say typically, maybe up to like 25, but they're not nearly as expensive or as many cards as like the commander decks for Magic, right? That require a lot more cards for that deck. So starter decks. I know a lot of the physical card games also have been coming out with like um, two-player learner type bundles, right? Where it's like it has two decks and like the rules and little like tokens that you might need, so that you and somebody else can learn the game together, and it has all of that stuff kind of included to get you going. So, jumping in brand new, there's usually a lot of ways to just kind of get that stuff and start jumping into the game. And I know we've talked about this a lot with like the physical games. Uh, and you mentioned like competitiveness earlier. So another thing with this is like, how involved are you looking to be? If you're just looking to like play and have fun, like at your, dinner table at home, yeah, you can usually get into these games for fairly cheap. Just play with, your spouse or partner or a friend or a sibling, or a parent or something, and buy one of those like two-player starter kits, or like, $30 or something for a couple of starter decks, and just have fun with those cards at your dinner table. Or like you mentioned, a lot of the digital card games, you can typically jump in and play without any like monetary cost, especially at first. Play through the tutorial. A lot of the digital games have things like some sort of like new player startup thing, or like if you're new, you kind of work through some sort of track or some sort of kind of like storyline, where you play different characters. You play against some like different, uh, decks to like learn what the colors are for that TCG, or like the classes or heroes or whatever it is that they have in that game. And you get like rewards and different stuff. You can earn cards or decks along the way. So um, you can typically get into these games for pretty low cost or low time commitments. But as you kind of work your way, if you want to play different formats, if you want to build a bigger collection, if you want to play competitive decks and play in tournaments, the kind of more in depth and more involved you get, it's going to be more costly and going to be like more time that you're going to have to put into this. Um, and I'll just give you a second. Do you have anything else to add to that before I ask you another question?
No, I mean, I think that's all good, but just once again, ask your community, ask your friends, and try to meet people. Games are social, and while you can go it alone with some of the digital games, I think that even with those, you have a much better time and better experience finding like-minded, kind people who are also interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially places that might be like bigger cities, or if you have something like that that's closer, there's also generally several card game stores, so you can, or game stores. You can try the different game stores, see what kind of things they offer, what kind of people are at those different stores, and get to meet even more people, which is great. If you live in a smaller place like I do, that might not be an option. So it might be a little bit easier to go kind of the like streamer podcasts, like online community route, which is totally valid too. Or if you also maybe have like social anxiety, it's hard for you to go out and meet people in person. There are definitely alternatives now with a lot of the technology and stuff that we're getting with these card games. So that's very good, which is exciting. But the next thing that I want to ask you about is kind of learning about different formats or game modes or different things, because I think whether you're jumping back in and a lot of things have changed or new things have been added, or if you're new to a game, sometimes I feel like that can be overwhelming. Right? Like you talk about Magic, for example, and it's like you say, "Oh, I want to learn Magic," and then all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, do you want to play Commander? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do Modern? Do you want to do?" And you're like, "I don't know what any of that means. What? So it can be a little bit overwhelming. Or if you are getting back into a game, like I said, maybe things have changed, or you're like, oh yeah, like I remember that. And then you're like, wait, this is different. Or now they have this other, what is this thing? Like for Hearthstone, you jump in, you're like, what is Battlegrounds? And then you're like, Battlegrounds duos, like what is that? And it's just like a almost a completely different game, and the cards are used so differently. So if you're kind of jumping back in or you're new to things, it can kind of feel a little bit overwhelming. But there's usually at least like kind of a starting point, I think. So what would you say to like to that point, or talk to people about for that?
So if you're playing a digital game, I would recommend playing the most popular mode that the game onboards you to first. So if you're playing Pokemon or Hearthstone, that would be called Standard. If you're playing Magic, Standard also. But the main reason you want to do this is because you have to learn fundamentals. And if you jump into a game that has lots of formats, most of the formats that are not standard or the introductory one are much more complex. You need to know about more cards. You need to understand the mechanics of the game better. And if the game is old, there are some really scary old mechanics that are terrifying and will make you cry. So don't do that if you're new. Start out, learn the fundamentals, and once you get a feel from the game, you can figure out what you like and dislike. If you are trying out Magic Standard and you're like, wow, this is super cool. I love being able to play lots of cards. I love being able to interact with my opponent. I love it when the game is fast. Well, Legacy might be a good format for you to try. But if you were to hop right into Legacy, you might get overwhelmed and not find that thing that it turned out you would really like. So take it easy. If you're going to your game store for a physical game, ask people what they like. What do they play? And even if the format is a little tougher, if you are playing the thing that the majority of people are playing, you're going to pick it up more quickly and you're going to learn a little better. And once you have that foundation, then you can branch off and explore. So, do you have anything to add, Don? Do you want to explain banding to the people?
Explain
Is
what?
there banding? This is one of the older magic mechanics that can be a little bit intimidating because nobody knows how banding works. I
Well, that
promise.
includes me. So go for it then, because I don't know what that is.
I am. I'm not gonna do that. We're just gonna say after the show, maybe we'll put it in the link below. We'll put up the rules page for banding, and you guys can see what happens with that. It's a bit involved. So
Good to know. Yeah, I
yeah,
I don't know how I've
it's
never heard that before, but I've never heard that before.
well, all right. I'm gonna go back on my word. I'll read you the reminder text for banding.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Any creatures with banding and up to one without can attack in a band. Bands are blocked as a group. If any creatures with banding you control are blocking or being blocked by a creature, you divide that creature's combat damage, not its controller, among any of the creatures it's being blocked by or is blocking. And that is the short version of it. The actual rules section on band is Rule 70222, and there are clauses A through M. So, multiple paragraphs that it would take to actually flesh out what that really means in terms of rules. And other keywords don't have that many clauses. You don't have to read a short rule book just to understand one keyword.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, no
So,
thanks.
it's something.
Oh. That just makes me feel like that's kind of referring back to what I said earlier, where it's like, depending on how deep you want to like dive into the card game, if you're just going to be playing like with friends or family or something, or if you're going to be going to a game store near you and playing with like your local community, or if you're playing online, or if you're doing tournaments, like the higher up you go on that scale, the more you're going to want to learn things like that. And that will lead me into the next kind of I feel like we're kind of hitting like some various bullet points about this, like generalized bullet points, and diving slightly into them. But uh, what other resources would you recommend for people? I think especially kind of, we already mentioned now how like there's a lot of technology, and even for physical card games, there's so many resources online now. Things like, YouTube, data websites, or just like articles or different things that people write, or even communities being created on Twitter, or like you said, like Facebook, Facebook groups, whatever it is. There's so many different resources that even for physical games that you can go find online to kind of help you jump in and learn some of these things. Is there any like particular that you use, or that you like try to find like a specific kind of resource when you're learning?
So, community discords can be a great place to start. And while I would not recommend Reddit necessarily, if you go to the sidebar, a lot of the subreddits for games have some good resources there. I wouldn't, I don't think I can endorse trusting Reddit to tell you what to do if you're making a post, but some subreddits are better than others, and there are some good pieces of advice. Like, I actually would say that the competitive Hearthstone community is pretty good in terms of providing resources for players who want to get set up with that aspect of the game. There also are great articles online. I know that I personally really like to read content, and the Channel Fireball content that's now on TCG Player is really, really excellent. There are also podcasts for certain games that are very good. For Magic, especially, there was Limited Resources, which is one that I really enjoyed for learning draft. And I think if you are looking to learn draft in any game, even if it's not Magic, that podcast is probably the best resource for you to sort of orient your thinking and see how players who have experience in that type of game approach the problem. And
Yeah.
yeah, as the last one, streams always good. Seeing people talk about it is good. And in general, even if it's pretty passive, the more ways that you can expose yourself to people talking about the game and sharing their experiences, the better you're going to get. Because card games are not something you run into everyday life. If you do not have this hobby, you're not suddenly going to be walking down the street and faced with a problem that is a combination of a statistics word problem and a test to your mental fortitude. That doesn't happen much. You don't just get happen into it.
Wait,
So you're
that
gonna
does,
have to
that doesn't
really.
happen
It's true though.
much. How often is that happening to you? Where you have to clarify, it doesn't happen much.
I can say it has happened. I can't I won't say never. As a data scientist, I don't think I'm allowed to say the word never
Okay,
in
well
this
that's
context.
that's fair. That's fair.
But the bottom line is you likely have not had to deal with problems like card games present more than a handful of times in your life outside of that context. So for you to hear people talk about those problems, see how they approach them, and for you, even just passively, to orient your mind towards thinking about games in that way is going to make you a better player and make you enjoy the hobby more in ways that you won't even notice at first. It's just going to feel like a switch is flipped. One day it's confusing, but if you are interested, you enjoy it, and you do just kind of put in the time to see how other people break down that problem, you'll just be like, aha, it makes sense. And you're going to start having a better time and maybe be able to crack some solutions of your own.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. Okay. Is there any other like main points for this that you feel like that we didn't hit on already?
I feel like we covered the big things.
Yeah.
I guess otherwise, just one last thing. I would feel remiss in saying this, but don't trick yourself into thinking that this hobby is investing. Just a last little warning. If you are playing card games with the expectation that you're going to get all this money out of it years down the line when your cards are worth $1 billion, that's not what happens. There's a Wikipedia page of every dead card game that has ever existed, and boy, are there a lot. There are hundreds and hundreds of card games that just don't exist anymore. And I'm going to tell you, everybody who is watching this show or hosting the show who has played a card game is or has played one of them or is playing it. So when you're buying cards, just make sure that you are doing so because you enjoy them in the moment, either as a collectible for yourself or as a game piece, not because it's something that's going to be your retirement. I just know that there are some people who do have that mindset, and it can really suck the fun out of things for you.
Yeah. I think the amount of times that I have heard people say things like, when Magic was first popping off, I bought a bunch of booster boxes, to resell later, or I held on to all these things to like resell in the future. Or I tried to get into X game so that I could, invest in it, like resell that stuff and make a bunch because it was popular. The amount of times that I've heard that, I think I would have more money from like, even if I got like a nickel for every time I've heard that, I'd probably have more money than I would have from like selling the cards. So yeah, it's definitely not something like, there are people that can do that. But I think the big thing with that is that it takes a lot of upfront investment, and in the long run, you're usually not getting a very good return on that investment, right? So it's very expensive. It's not like something where you can kind of create more with it, where you have, something like if you're creating stuff on Etsy, right, where you might spend a bit to create, or to get the materials for your project to start things out, and then you can craft stuff or create things and then sell it for a profit or whatever. It's like, that's not quite how these card games work. Not in the slightest. So yeah, definitely a good thing to bring up. Just anybody that might be finding this that's like, yeah, I want to get into card games so I can make money. Good luck. Very few people do it. Also, with that being said, if you're also somebody who's like, I want to get into card game competitions so that I can go travel and play games and win money, good luck, because it's also, again, kind of the same line of thought, right? That it's very usually costly to travel to those events for competition, between like the travel expenses, hotel, food, entry to play, the entry or the like cost of getting the cards to play, time you might have to invest to be knowledgeable, to do well, and then even still very few people make it and do well consistently enough to actually get more than what they spent. Maybe you can like spike one tournament or something cool, then you're like, yeah, that one paid off. But then the next 4, you're like, oh, I went 2 and 4, and that was huge loss of money, right? And then you're like, oh, that sucks. So
Yeah. I mean, if you have the goal more, I'm gonna do this with my friends, have a good time, and if I really get to a strong level, I might be able to do it for free. There you go. You might break even. That's attainable. If you are an excellent player and you are among the cream of the crop, you'll get there. And if you want to make money, learn video editing, learn algorithms, and do content. Even when prizing was at the peak for card games, the money was always in the streaming. That's the sad secret.
yeah, streaming and like content and stuff, right?
Yep.
So yeah, and I think you can find that kind of information kind of anywhere you look. If you look at people who have talked about their experiences trying to go travel to a lot of events and do that kind of stuff, and you'll usually find that it's like, unless you are at the very top and do it consistently, it's not really feasible to actually think of it as like a job income. So yeah. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that will do it though for the topic.
Okay.
So, wow, that was a lot. I feel like we talked more about money, do content.
Well,
yeah. I mean, you can see right now, Dawn and I, we have these chair backs propped up on the piles of money that we're sitting on as content creators to do the show.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually really annoying. You would be surprised how heavy stacks of $100 bills are when you have to haul them all the way upstairs in your house to make something to sit on. It's really the worst. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
So if we're sitting on piles of money, what does that say? Because you're like so low on your camera. It doesn't look like you're sitting on a bunch.
I mean, yeah. When I said you'd be surprised how heavy it is, that can go both ways.
Yeah, the amounts that I make is like I could do all in like one grocery trip inside, So that's kind of like the equivalent. Like, yeah, I can take all these bags in one whole trip. Woohoo! Like it's not a lot. Yeah, just that's always something that's so funny to me too, since I've done some casting for like the Hearthstone Masters tours and some of these bigger events, right? And sometimes the comments that people make, like, oh, why do they have, so many casters and this, and they should have like spent that money to, hire a dev for something else. And it's like, how much do you think we're getting paid for this? Like, especially compared to the cost that it would take a dev to do what you're suggesting. Like, I don't know where they think all that money is, but surely I'm not seeing it.
So yeah, dev in the greater Los Angeles area versus 3 casters for 12 hours. Who you got?
Oh my gosh. I don't think it even has to be in that specific area. I think you could say any area, and it's always gonna be the dev is gonna be worth more.
Probably just a smidge. All right. With that, thank you all for joining us this week. And if you or someone else you know would be interested in joining us, please reach out. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/tccgroundtable. You can use our top pinned tweet for a link to our Discord, or use the link in the description show notes. Check out our Discord. Check out the video version on dragonrider's YouTube channel, and where you can find audio podcasts. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the works. Also, if you're looking to pick up some sweet playmats or merch, you can use our Ink Gaming affiliate link. And last, check out Amberflight Gaming on Twitter and on our website. And individually, you can find me on twitter.com/daddankest, on YouTube for DankestDad. The channel's finally out of hibernation. There's new content up. Will be more content this weekend. Huzzah! And yeah, you can find me on Discord as DankestDad. And DragonRider, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, DonnieDK. That's DAWNIEDK. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube, dragonrider TCCG. And then you can also hear me talking all things standard Hearthstone over on the Doctor 3HS podcast. And yeah, doing all sorts of stuff for Amberflight Gaming, which is very exciting. And yeah, we've got lots of stuff planned and coming, and I feel like this is a big year. So yay!
Yeah, and well, as for our last co-host, well, he couldn't make it today to be here with us. You also might be able to find RonMexico on twitter.com/RonHS, or you may find the Twitch partner, RonMexico,
Woo!
on his Twitch channel for RonHS. Yeah, so big news there. While we were in our little hiatus, Ron finally got there and got that partner status, which is amazing for him, and congratulations.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so bummed that when we got back right after he hit partner that he's not here this week to talk about it. But thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
up. We can hopefully hear a little bit more about that specifically from him next time that he's here. So yeah, congrats, Ron.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for watching. And Ty, especially, thank you for all the subs. That's super generous and awesome of you. And we'll see all of you at the roundtable.